West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
I am not a lawyer. I do not even pretend to be one on TV. But I do have questions about the law, about the United States Supreme Court putting us back in the days of abortion being illegal in this country. And at least for right now, that list of questions includes these. President Biden says he's going to mount a whole of government response to defend women's rights. What does that mean? What could he do? Is it important that he's putting his White House counsel in charge of that effort? Is that significant? Also, should we expect all the red states to now copy the Texas ban? Since the Supreme Court has allowed it to become law, is this going to be true in every other red state now? Has the Supreme Court only legalized the Texas ban or allowed the Texas ban to stand on a temporary basis? Or should we expect it to stay in place indefinitely? Also, since we're now back in a world where some states ban abortion, it's one now, but I'm guessing it'll be more soon, can women get help to leave abortion-banned states so they can travel to a state that will let them get an abortion? Or does the bounty hunter vigilante parts of this Texas law, could that be used against any of us who would donate money or otherwise provide help to a woman to cross state lines? Could a new federal law on abortion rights help? Democrats say that's what they plan to do. Even if they can do that, would it help? And is worse coming? And if so, how do we prepare for it? Joining us now is someone who has talked me off many a legal ledge over the years. Tonight, I think we might possibly be standing on that ledge together, however. Dahlia Lithwick is senior editor at Slate.com. Dahlia, it's nice to see you. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Rachel. Thanks for having me.
First of all, let me give you the option. You have special privileges here on this show. Do you want to throw all these questions out? Are these at least close to the right ones to be asking, or are they not?
They are good. I will tell you, when you threw them up on the screen again, I had the most wicked flashback to issue spotter exams in my first year of law school, and my heart started pounding, and I was like, this, I'm in law school, I can do it, so let's power through. I will say that the questions about, the Women's Health Protection Act and the potential legislation and what can be done, I know that that's what Nancy Pelosi is pushing, that's what Biden is talking about, President Biden, I'm sorry. But I think we should be really clear. It doesn't seem that has support in the Senate. I think you said Joe Manchin notwithstanding. And I think there is a larger question buried somewhere in one of your questions about whether the Supreme Court would just turn around and strike it down. So, we can certainly talk about codifying Roe, which has been, I think, the answer to this. But it's not at all clear to me, A, that happens in the Senate, and B, that the Supreme Court tolerates it.
Okay, well, after we speak with you tonight, we're going to be speaking with the sponsor of the Women's Health Protection Act to try to get her take on that. Congresswoman Judy Chu has been introducing this proposed law year after year after year, and we're going to talk to her about exactly those points because she thinks this is a beachhead and it's a way to do it. So we'll get back to that later on in the show. But let me ask you about the federal government part of it. I mean, President Biden said today, he didn't just condemn what the Supreme Court did. He said he wants a whole of government response. He specifically called out the Department of Health and Human Services and the Justice Department, and he put his White House counsel in charge of it. Do any of those raise your interest in terms of something that the federal government might be able to do that they haven't previously done?
Look, I am absolutely delighted if Joe Biden wants to put together a whole government response. My sense is, look, this should have been happening from Inauguration Day, where we had clinics in, Louisiana, Mississippi, places where women were all but losing access. These are protections that are long, long, long overdue. And by the way, that goes back to the Obama administration. So absolutely anything that can be done, robust protections for women's reproductive care, you're not going to get me to poo-poo it. I am going to say, Rachel, the thing that I've been saying to you, I think, for years, which is this is a courts problem. And in my view, where the rubber hits the road has to be thinking very, very seriously about structural court reform, what we do about courts that take it upon themselves to nullify Roe in the dark of night. I don't think these problems can be solved as a sort of whole government response and then say we'll kick it over to the court commission and hope that they make a recommendation that in 27 years we can do to reform the courts.
Could that court commission take this more seriously from what you know about President Biden? So again, for those of our viewers who haven't been following this closely, there has been a serious proposal that has been promoted with increasing urgency that the Supreme Court should be expanded. And that other potential reforms to the way the Supreme Court operates and the way it's constituted ought to be seriously considered because of the way that Republicans in particular have really stacked the deck to make that court their own plaything. President Biden formed a court commission to study the matter. And as you say, somewhat facetiously, we can't wait for them to hear that we ought to do something different in 27 years. If you could wave a magic wand and be the new convener of that court commission, what would you have them do?
Rachel, I want to be super clear. I have so much respect for so many of the people on that commission, but the time to fix the courts was yesterday, if not 10 years ago. And I just think that having a court commission that is not, by the way, seriously looking at court expansion, that is doing a kind of quasi-academic exercise trying to think about other versions of structural court reform, I just think the urgency that we are facing in terms of what this court can do and will do, not just in terms of reproductive rights, but in terms of dismantling the administrative state, in terms of voting rights, which we're not going to have a chance to talk about. But this court, I don't think, can be handled with a chin stroking, let's weigh some proposals and think about it. I really do think that every single day we are not talking seriously about court reform is a day that is absolutely lost.
In the short term, Dahlia, do you expect that we're going to have a lot of red states do copycat laws that look just like the Texas law? And will those effectively will those go into effect as soon as they pass them when we're going to have abortion bans in multiple states?
It certainly looks like it, Rachel. John Roberts, the Chief Justice, one of the dissenters from the order that came down last night, the point he made was that we could have enjoined this. We could have enjoined it and gotten to the merits eventually, let this thing play out. The court does that all the time. By failing to enjoin it, the court has invited more. And as you noted, we're seeing all over the country, Florida falling over itself to pass a copycat statute. And why wouldn't it? They've now had the doors flung open. So I think without a doubt, we are going to see very, very soon a checkerboard of states in which, for all intents and purposes, there is no right to abortion. Roe v. Wade is a right that exists on paper and not as a matter of fact.
And briefly and practically, for people who are thinking about funding efforts, donating to efforts, contributing personally to efforts, volunteering, to help women in abortion-banned states get to states where abortion is still legal so that they can have the procedure done elsewhere. Are these laws designed to target people who provide that kind of help?
You know, I've seen that answered both in the affirmative and the negative today. NPR was reporting earlier today that the law will not reach out and get you if you are simply writing a check to help somebody get out of state. It will not touch you if you are, in fact, treating someone out of state. But Larry Tribe, writing in The Guardian today, suggested otherwise. And I think the truth is that the law is sufficiently vague, Rachel, that we're going to have to test it and find out. And one of the points, the very purpose of this law is to chill people, not just abortion providers in Texas, but to chill the entire community of people who want to help women right now into second guessing whether they're going to be on the hook. And that was the purpose of the law. That was the law the Supreme Court let go into effect.
It is Friday, the 3rd of September of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. And we've made it to Friday, so that means Labor Day weekend. I hope you have a good one. The end of summer, the traditional end of summer. So here we are in the fall of our lives, literally. I actually was commenting to my elderly mom just the other day that it felt like there had been somewhat of a change in the weather. And it's mostly because of the angle of the sun. It's really weird how that works. Don't tell the flat earthers. They won't know or understand, and they will try to kill you to convince you that you're wrong about a heliocentric universe and the earth being round. Actually, it's not round, but, close. Okay? All right? Sphere. So, my sister had to run a gauntlet yesterday. My sister, the registered nurse who works at the largest hospital here in this part of the Rogue River Valley, and she was confronted by a couple hundred anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers at the hospital complaining that, I think what they were complaining about is that they should have the right to back the virus. It's insane. They were protesting at a hospital that has no beds for anybody because they're filled with COVID patients. Don't have a heart attack in this town or this area. And I got to tell you, there's a lot of old people around here. We're all getting old. And I got to say, anecdotally, by and large, people have been letting themselves go. And they're going to be the first ones whining that there's not a bed for them. For whatever reason, they have to go to the hospital. We have the National Guard helping out. It's that bad. And these people are at the hospital calling it fake, calling our governor a Nazi because she wants people to be well. Why do they have to be worried about other people? Why can't they have their freedom? And yet, they are masked as a raucous, potentially violent mob in front of a hospital with no hospital beds from a pandemic that they deny. And if they do tacitly approve it exists, then it's our fault for impinging upon their freedom to do whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it. While at the same time, I'm serious, while at the same time, amassing at the local growers' fair, farmers' market, to loudly proclaim on bullhorns and with billboard-size images of mutilated fetuses that abortion is wrong and women should be thrown in hell. for daring to think they would want to get rid of an angel baby. They're Nazis. I guess I just bumped my microphone. I think more accurately, we should just call them Christo-fascists. Because that's what they are. I like Nazis because, less characters, rolls off the tongue. Christo-fascists, that kind of rolls off the tongue too. We might have to embrace it. But I like Nazis. It sums it up pretty damn good, especially since we've been on an arc, a trajectory towards Nazism. Probably even since before the Nazis became the Nazis, since the Nazis looked at us to become and model their form of government and party structure of the Nazis. Need some scientific papers on eugenics? Go to America. Well, okay. Anti-Semitism? Go to America. Hell, they enslaved a whole population of people while genociding another whole population of people so that they could become the economic powerhouse that we have become. And don't you ever talk about reparations, you commie. Wow. Okay. And they don't want that being taught in the schools. Oh, no. The people that we were tearing their families apart and enslaving them and beating them, they liked it. They wanted it. They needed it. And we're here to help. Okay, well, we might have to turn that Reagan quote on his head. Like, what are the words? I know these, like, what are the 4 or 5 words that everyone hates to hear? I'm from the government and I'm here to help, right? Yeah, right. Okay, well, I'm here from Trump. And I'm here to help. Yeah, their idea of help is to pretty much rip your throat out. Break a leg if you don't do what they want you to do. You even got Kevin McCarthy out there threatening the telecoms with broken legs if they snitch on him. Yeah, Kevin. What else were you saying to Trump on the day of the insurrection? Now I know the subpoena is not for actual conversations or texts, just the mapping of it, the timestamp. That's what the investigators need. If it ever gets to the point of the actual text, that comes later. But right now, they're worried about getting to that point because it's going to come once they figure out the timestamps and the geolocation. Mm-hmm. All right. No wonder. Kevin doesn't say anything to rein in Marjorie Taylor Greene or Burbard or any of the folks in that caucus. Why? Because that's how you tell they're a mob family, right? Okay, they're going to take the Russian mob family government style of governing, whatever that is, and they're just going to embrace it. Why hide it? Why name it anything else? They are thugs. They like thuggery. It feels good. It does something to their endorphins, and it secretes endorphins for them, and they just feel good. They have to be cruel. It's their raison d'être. They would have no meaning in life unless they could impose cruelty upon another. Empathy? That's for losers. And I'm serious. I have heard that. You care about somebody else, not just yourself? You're a loser. Of course, the retort to that is like, well, sounds to me like you're putting out a justification for your own bad behavior, you Nazi. Okay, Christo-fascist, to be more accurate. So here we are. And I think it's going to take a lot more than just voting. And a lot more than just showing up in the streets. Well, I don't know. Do we start suing folks for not wearing masks? Boy, that would be fun. $10,000, and if they don't show up in court, you get a judgment adjudicated against them, and you collect the $10,000. Let's make it 15. I like that. Round it off. Yeah, how long would that last? Or how about this? I love this retort to the Texas abortion law. After 6 weeks, make men start paying child support. They'll change that law right now. And I would actually argue 98% of all unwanted births are the guy's fault. Why don't people sue them? Why don't we ever hear about that? And I'm a guy. But I try not to impregnate people. Well, who can now anyway, right? Well, I guess I could, but I'm not gonna. Yikes. What a world we live in. Okay, well, I suppose I could place some of the blame upon myself and some of my ilk, or the ilk that I ran with. There was a time when we didn't want to be bothered with the mundane trivialities of politics. It's for people of small minds and selfishness, and we had grander things to consider that we thought, more spiritual, more intellectual, more artistic than just letting the Nazis take over. It's that old, what, is it Niemenheimer? Was that his name? The Lutheran pastor or Presbyterian pastor who said, they came for the gypsies and I wasn't a gypsy, and so I didn't do anything. I know they're called Roma now, but he called them gypsies. Came for the Jews finally, and I didn't do anything. I wasn't a Jew. Then when they came for me, there was nobody left. Could be. Looked around and thought, wow, I've been gazing at my navel, and the next thing I know, these Nazis are taking over. Better wake up. Yep. And I wish, actually, to be honest with you, I wish that we didn't have to be weighted down by the mundane trivialities of this high school attitude about how to get along and figure out how we're going to pay for the potholes to be covered up and fixed. I guess if they're covered up, they are already fixed. But hey, it's Friday morning and I need more coffee. Ah, boy. So, schools are closing down after only a couple of days because kids are getting sick. There's this story where this parent, their kid tested positive, sent the kid to school, and now 80 kids in that school have COVID. Some in, a death watch. Little kids. Well, at the same time, we have elected GOP Nazis on live TV telling the America, kids don't die from this. They're immune. Sort of like the stories of slave times where, there was this one slave doctor who actually bought slaves so he could experiment upon them with his weird gynecological experiments. This is ghoulish. And he'd do it without any anesthesia. Now, I should say anesthesia then wasn't, still coming into being. But there was no, here, take a shot of this whiskey. None of that. Why? Because black women don't feel pain. Animals don't feel pain. When we kill them, we whip them to pull this cart, they don't feel pain. Children do not die from COVID. They're less than human in some way, different, not quite developed. until we want to use him as an example and try him as an adult and fry him on the electric chair. It's like I mentioned on social media. Save the zygote. Starve the spoiled brats. That's the GOP now. Well, now, always has been. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. I got to get that in. Well, at the top, yes, structural court reform is the only way to counter Republican distortion of the courts on abortion, voting rights, and, dare I say, democracy itself. Indeed. On the rest of the menu, U.S. hospitals have been hit with a nurse staffing crisis amid the COVID pandemic, and that's sort of a follow-up on my sister's travails yesterday, trying to make it through this mob. 65 years old. My sister has been an RN since her 20s. She put in over 30 years in pediatric oncology at Children's Hospital in Orange County, then decided to retire and came here and saw a need. She went back out of the goodness of her heart, and people are spitting on her. What the hell? Well, I wish she would slow down. Jeez. Federal and state agencies say they are responding to reports of oil and chemical spills resulting from Hurricane Ida. Well, that happens every time. And the Secretary of State for Georgia is looking for evidence of collusion between Stacey Abrams and the DOJ. Sounds like a civil war in our hands, doesn't it? After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the editor-in-chief of a Russian news outlet that has been designated a foreign agent has accused the Russian state of destroying the media. Well, that's not all they've destroyed. And Zorba the Greek composer Mikis Theodorakis has died at age 96. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link right there by the social media scroll. And the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln because that's how we do it. And we thank Kelly for doing so and so much more. Thank you, Kelly. If you would look across the page from that chat room link near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com to the leftish, you'll hopefully notice the link to our Patreon page. If you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, you would be helping us fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended, indeed, because we are a bulwark, a powerhouse of resistance against the Nazi takeover of the United States of America. Okay, Christo-fascism, to be more accurate. But anyway, if you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink and send those funds our way once a month, we're able to stretch those dollars and dollars that we have coming out of our own wallets. We stretch them all beyond compare. We pay our bills, we fly under the radar, and continue this resistance against a hostile takeover of the great experiment by forces arrayed from, white supremacy and all their fellow travelers. So we thank you for your generosity in allowing us to fulfill that civic duty. And we also thank you for future patronage, because we're going to need it. Thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. And we thank Tom for doing so and so much more. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. Now, the reason I'd like you to follow me there is because I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime. And then I post that up on Twitter and other social media platforms because that's what you do. Anyway, the show notes and links are very important. Check them out. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. Even like you can find podcasts in the sofa cushions. Pull them off. There's going to be some there. All right. Maybe not enough to buy lunch, but there will be. Okay, mixing metaphors. Is that a metaphor? I don't know, but we're mixing them, and we can do that here. All right, this first offering is Friday because it's Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, and we got the French 77s virtually shaken, poured, and ready for your virtual imbibing pleasure. So there you go. Okay, the Associated Press, Heather Hollingsworth, and Michael Kunzelman of the Associated Press bring us this first offering in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The COVID-19 pandemic has created a nurse staffing crisis that is forcing many U.S. hospitals to pay top dollar to get the help they need to handle the crush of patients this summer. Well, they should have been paying top dollar to begin with, but hey, here we are. The problem, health leaders say, is twofold. Nurses are quitting or retiring. My 65-year-old sister ought to. And they are exhausted or demoralized by the crisis, and many are leaving for lucrative temporary jobs with traveling nurse agencies that can pay $5,000 or more a week. Well, they can. Sometimes they don't. It's gotten to the point where doctors are saying, maybe I should quit being a doctor and go be a nurse. You know, I used to say that when I was owning my restaurant. I was thinking, maybe I should stop being an owner of this restaurant and become a waiter because they're making a lot more money than me. Well, the average pay for a traveling nurse has soared from roughly $1,000 to $2,000 per week before the pandemic to $3,000 to $5,000 now, said Sophia Morris, a vice president at San Diego-based healthcare staffing firm Aya Healthcare. She said Aya has 48,000 openings for traveling nurses to fill. Wow. And here I thought the refrigerated mobile morgue trucks were going to be the growth industry. Well, we can start with this, but I'm still saying the refrigerated mobile morgue trucks, growth industry. People should get in on the ground floor on that one. The average pay, at competitor Simply Fee, President James Quick said the hospitals his company works with are seeing unprecedented levels of vacancies. Small to medium-sized hospitals generally have dozens of full-time openings, and the large health systems have hundreds of full-time openings, he said. The explosion in pay has made it hard on hospitals without deep enough pockets. Well, you know, my experience is that there's a few administrators that could take a pay cut, you know, and help out the hospital. Have they ever done that ever? No, not ever. Kansas Governor Laura Kelly lamented recently that the state's hospitals risk being outbid for nurses by other states that pay a fortune. She said Wednesday that several hospitals, including one in Topeka, had open beds, but no nurses to staff them. Oh, gee, well, start paying a wage that people want to live on. In Kansas City, Missouri, Truman Medical Centers has lost about 10 nurses to travel jobs in recent days and is looking for travelers to replace them. And CEO Charlie Shields said that. He said it's hard to compete with the travel agencies, which are charging hospitals $165 to $170 per hour per nurse. He said the agencies take a big cut of that, but he estimated the nurses are still clearing about $70 to $90 an hour, which is 2 to 3 times what the hospitals pay its staff nurses. You mean you're paying them $20? No wonder. I think clearly people are taking advantage of the demand that is out there, Shields said. I hate to use gouged as a description, but we're clearly paying a premium and allowing people to have fairly high profit margins happen. In Texas, more than 6,000 travel nurses have flooded the state to help with the surge through a state-supported program, but on the same day that 19 of them went to work at a hospital in the northern part of the state, 20 other nurses at the same place gave notice that they would be leaving for a traveling contract. The nurses who haven't left, who have stayed with their facilities, they're seeing these other people come in now who are making more money. It provides a tense working environment. Well, gee, maybe it's time for a pay raise for your regular staff. The pandemic was in its early stages when Kim Davis, 36, decided to quit her job at an Arkansas hospital and became a traveling nurse. She said she has roughly doubled her income in 14 months that she has been treating patients in intensive care units in Phoenix, San Bernardino, California, and Tampa, Florida. Davis said many of her colleagues are following the same path. Health leaders say nurses are bone-tired and frustrated from being asked to work overtime, from getting screamed at and second-guessed by members of the community, and from dealing with people who choose not to get vaccinated or wear a mask. Michael Biesecker of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Federal and state agencies say they are responding to reports of oil and chemical spills resulting from Hurricane Ida, following the publication of aerial photos by the Associated Press. EPA spokesman Nick Conger said yesterday, Thursday, that a special aircraft carrying photographic and chemical detection equipment was dispatched from Texas to Louisiana to fly over the area hard hit by the Category 4 storm, including a Phillips 66 refinery along the Mississippi River, where the AP first reported an apparent oil spill on Wednesday. Coast Guard spokesman Petty Officer 3rd Class Gabriel Wisdom said that its aircraft has also flown over the refinery, as well as the Gulf of Mexico. The AP published photos of a miles-long brownish-black slick in the waters south of Port Fourchon, Louisiana. The AP first reported the possible spills on Wednesday after reviewing aerial images of the disaster zone taken by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Ida made landfall Sunday, its eye wall carving through Louisiana with 150-mile-per-hour winds and a storm surge so powerful it temporarily reversed the flow of the mighty Mississippi. Travis Geddes of Raw Story brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Now, I said back during the election that Raffensperger could not be trusted, okay? This guy's been running Georgia politics for quite a while, suppressing the vote, purging voters off the voting rolls for years, and he's no ally. Well, Georgia's Secretary of State is using a sunshine law, typically used by journalists to hunt for evidence of collusion between the federal government and civil rights activists against his state's new voting restrictions. The U.S. Department of Justice filed a lawsuit in June challenging the new law, and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger is using the Freedom of Information Act to seek evidence that government lawyers are, quote, bowing to pressure from liberal activist organizations who oppose the restrictions, end quote. We want to find out exactly, are they listening to these outside organizations? Raffensperger told the Daily Beast. Are they taking their orders from high command, which is actually Stacey Abrams and these liberal activist organizations? Or are there actual liberal activists in the Department of Justice spinning these lawsuits out of whole cloth? A number of civil rights groups sued to block SB 202 in May, and the Justice Department followed the next month with a suit that alleges GOP legislators enacted the law to intentionally deprive black Georgians of their right to vote. And Raffensperger complained that Georgia was being continually targeted when other states, including Minnesota and New York, also request identification for absentee ballots or prohibit handing out food and drinks to voters in line. That's a lie. The Department of Justice has taken the position that it's okay for some states to do what they're doing, but in Georgia, you can't do that, Raffensperger said. That's a patently ridiculous position. Why are we held to a different standard? Because you're racist, and before the Voting Rights Act was gutted by the Roberts Court, you were under DOJ review, you bigot. In this reporter's opinion, of course. But civil rights activists say Raffensperger's FOIA requests intentionally single out black churches and organizations, and that his accusations led to death threats. And all the targeted organizations deny collusion with federal officials. What do they mean by collusion anyway? Now, I'm wondering, if you're working with the DOJ, that makes you a bad person? What is this? Is this Russia? No, it's not. It's the United States of America, and Raffensperger better shut up and follow the law, or the law is gonna, well, come down on his head like a big black crow. Indeed. Let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You're listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, will you want to remember? No one can accuse Hugh Jackman of shying away from challenging roles. Between musicals and Marvel, he's done picks like The Prestige and The Fountain. In his latest, Reminiscence, the question is whether the challenge results from the demands of the character or the way the project was conceived and executed. It's the directorial debut of Lisa Joy, best known for her work on Westworld, with production help from Jonathan Nolan, brother of Christopher. Reminiscence is ambitious, part neo-noir thriller, part post-apocalyptic sci-fi, part crime procedural, and part psychological romance, the story concerns ex-soldier Nick, Jackman's character, and his also veteran sidekick Emily, Thandie Newton, who operate a business in an overheated, flooded Miami, helping clients relive memories. They have drugs, an immersion tank, and a hollow projector to assist in the effort. One night after closing, May, Rebecca Ferguson, walks in for a session, supposedly to find lost keys. Nick falls for her big time, much to the chagrin of Emily, who, despite her misgivings, sidekicks her way through the story, which starts in earnest after May suddenly vanishes. What this one has in the way of a cool idea, wonderful set design and cinematography, it loses in the lack of character development and heavy-handed narration. Both these issues are due to the sprawling nature of the narrative. We get hints of characters with interesting backstories, but too much is going on too fast to delve into them. The narration is an ill-conceived way to guide the thing through to its too many endpoints. As a concept and cautionary tale, there are reasons to watch this one. Had Joy stuck with the format with which she's familiar, the multi-episode series, reminiscence could have been truly killer. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. After a storm or disaster, it's important to eat only safe food. Throw away perishables like meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and leftovers stored above 40 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 hours or more. Throw away food with an unusual odor, color, or texture. Throw away food that may have come in contact with floodwater, including food in swollen, punctured, and damaged cans. When in doubt, throw it out.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Welcome to Abortion Vigilantism in Texas.
I'm Lily Ledbetter, and this is a Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
When a woman or girl is raped or is the victim of incest in Texas and becomes pregnant, she can't get an abortion because a Texas law, effective September 1st, prohibits any abortion after 6 weeks, a time when many women do not even know they're pregnant. No exceptions, not even for rape and incest. The law also makes it illegal for anyone to provide any kind of assistance to the woman considering an abortion. A father cannot counsel his daughter. A husband can't support his wife's decision, even after she was raped by a stranger. And then, the law allows any person, someone with absolutely no connection whatsoever to the person needing an abortion, to sue the woman and her dad, husband, sister, friend who gave her a ride to the clinic, and of course the abortion clinic itself, and receive a $10,000 award from them. $10,000! It's essentially a bounty program created by the state to hunt down women in need of medical care and those who would provide that care and support and help them. All this, notwithstanding the First Amendment's guarantee of freedom of speech and the constitutional guarantee of choice under Roe v. Wade, which this Texas law, as a practical matter, eviscerates in that state, which is, of course, its point. The legal challenges have begun.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1928. 300 musicians working in Chicago went on strike against 250 movie theaters. They were protesting their impending replacement by talking pictures. This was part of a nationwide wave of protests by the American Federation of Musicians. The union had amassed $1.5 million to fight laying off musicians who played at the movies. From the inception of cinema, Thomas Edison had hoped to merge sound and film. Since this did not happen in the early days of movies, the films used intertitles and had musical accompaniment. This music ranged from an orchestra in the large urban theaters to a single piano player in smaller theaters. Across the country, 75,000 musicians worked in movie theaters. This live music played an essential role in setting the mood of the film, building dramatic tension, and enhancing the movie-going experience. However, there was considerable difficulty matching other sound to film visuals. Western Electric and Bell Telephone produced the first commercially viable movie sound system. It hooked up a very large phonograph to a film projector. This was first used in the film Don Juan in 1926. But the next year, in October of 1927, the opening of the Al Jolson film The Jazz Singer marked the introduction of the first successful talking picture. Talking pictures were a boom to many comedic vaudevillian performers such as Jack Benny and the Marx Brothers, who could now translate their comedy onto film. As a result, musicians, members of the American Federation of Musicians, were no longer needed to provide musical accompaniment. By the end of 1928, nearly 2,000 theater musicians in the U.S. were unemployed. By 1929, nearly half of the nation's movie theaters had converted to sound. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all night hawks in the Diner of Life. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 44 degrees Fahrenheit. Brrr. Expecting a high of 91, though, and that's going to be considerably warmer than what we had yesterday. Sunny to partly cloudy with winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour for most of the day. Partly cloudy skies overnight with lows, they say, in the mid-50s. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Then sunny skies tomorrow with highs about the same, 91 to 93. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And should be the same throughout the weekend. Maybe a slight increase in that temperature for the daytime. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon continue to spike. We are now standing at 187,077 confirmed cases, and our deceased have now risen another 4 overnight to 214. Grass pollen and ragweed pollen are rated as none here right outside the window in Rogue River. The air quality index, though, is moderate and has increased to 91 parts per million, so do take care. The daytime UV index is high at a fall angle of 7. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.03 inches. Visibility is only at 6 miles, and relative humidity is at 69%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 70 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 82 and sunny. Rome is 85 and sunny. Kyiv is 65 and fair. Kabul is 78 and fair. Hong Kong is 80 degrees and fair. Tokyo is 68 and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 62 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 53 and cloudy. And New York is 67 degrees Fahrenheit, sunny. And I hope that you're not trapped in a basement apartment. Get out! And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Anton Zverev and Gabrielle Tetrol-Farber brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The editor-in-chief of a Russian news outlet designated as a foreign agent after it investigated the poisoning of opposition politician Alexei Navalny has accused the Russian state of destroying the media. The Insider and Roman Dobrokhatov, its editor-in-chief, angered the Kremlin by helping identify state security officials it said were behind the poisoning of Navalny in August of last year. The Kremlin has denied responsibility for Navalny falling ill and cast the incident as a Western-backed special operation to besmirch its reputation. The online outlet has published stories about the lives of Russia's secretive elite and collaborated with Bellingcat, a Dutch-based investigative website whose probes into Moscow's intelligence services have been condemned by Russian state officials as Western propaganda, which it denies. The authorities searched the editor's home in July after declaring his outlet a foreign agent and opened a criminal case against him for libel. He called the accusation nonsense. We're not talking about censorship here, but about the destruction of civil society's democratic elements, the 38-year-old told Reuters in an interview. I think this is only the beginning. The destruction of the media, he said, of non-governmental organizations is not an end in itself, but a means to tighten state control.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Michelle Cambus and George Georgiopoulos of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Composer Mikis Theodorakis, whose music crossed international boundaries in his captivating score for the film Zorba the Greek, died yesterday, Thursday, plunging Greece into 3 days of mourning. A towering man with a brooding presence and a shock of wavy hair, Theodorakis' work evoked a progressive democratic vision of the world, though his political struggles reflected a darker side of Greece, rarely seen by visitors. As news of his death at home in Athens at the age of 96 swept across the country of 11 million, authorities declared 3 days of mourning and tributes poured in from across the political spectrum. Theodorakis introduced a carefree image of Greece into the world in the 1960s, with Zorba, the earthy soundtrack to a movie starring Anthony Quinn as the lovable rogue who dances barefoot on a Cretan beach. But at what was a tumultuous time in Greek history, he also came to epitomize the bitter struggles of class resistance with the thumping, passionate intensity of his Romeocene, a Greekness cycle of songs that became anthems for the political left. Praising a man he called the Universal Greek, conservative Prime Minister Mitsotakis, who had known Theodorakis from childhood, said we had all forgotten that he was a mere mortal, but his legacy of music, his political activism, and his service to the nation in times of crisis lives on. Born on the Greek island of Chios on July 29th of 1925, Theodorakis was repeatedly jailed for his beliefs. He was arrested in 1947, accused of being a sympathizer with guerrilla forces in the Civil War that broke out soon after World War II between right-wing royalists and left-wing popular forces. Sent to a notorious camp on the island of Macaronesus in 1948, he was beaten and tortured, had his legs broken, and on one occasion was buried alive and left for dead. He was released in August of 1949. Theodorakis entered politics in 1963 after his friend Grigoris Lambarakis, a left-wing lawmaker, was murdered during a peace demonstration. The Costa Gravas film Z, scored by Theodorakis, was based on the killing. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, and the week. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.